Alright, man, peace. So as most of you brothers know, the NBA is quickly approaching their quote-unquote Black Lives Matter, really Black Lesbians Matter, bubble tournament that is occurring in Disney World in Orlando, Florida. So the question that I have, and that I want you brothers to have, especially as you proceed to watch some of these games, is how long will the NBA dwell in the woke rabbit hole? Will they respond to the precipitous drop in ratings that I believe is going to occur, not initially, but after a while, especially once their athletes show that they're more intent on trolling the viewer than they are in actually entertaining the masses, which is their job. This is the reason why the liberal Caucasian, but particularly the liberal Caucasian Jew, always tries to entice and encourage the woke meatheads in the NFL and the NBA, as I call them, to believe that they're leaders, because they know that those people are bought and paid for. They need the average so-called black man and young black man who's impressionable to look at athletes as leaders, because the people who are supposed to be leading and who are qualified to lead are going to be pushed to the wayside as the liberal Caucasian and the liberal Caucasian Jew communicates their intentions, their agendas for the so-called black community through these proxy leaders called athletes. And as you can see, or as we're going to see, many of the top shelf professional basketball players are clearly reading from a script. They're being prompted to stand up for quote-unquote Breonna Taylor. And I always say this: if you're a so-called black person, either man or woman, and you want to become popular, just die. Die, but in particular get killed. Then all of a sudden the average so-called black person will care so much about you and they'll talk about how great you were, even though they never knew you. And look, don't get it twisted. There are some beautiful members of our people, but a lot of our people, unfortunately, are caught in this woke rabbit hole. And what they do is they just respond to dribble. They respond to waves. They ride waves. They're not even quite sure why they think what they think. They just go according to what they're seeing on television. So you know what? They're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Now, as we go to break, we are not only monitoring the Magic Clippers scrimmage, we are also monitoring all the different players who are speaking here in Orlando, several continuing to use their platform, particularly during their media availability.
Brothers, please keep in mind that we all have a platform now. It's called social media. Anyone can do a video on Facebook or on Instagram or on YouTube, whatever platform you choose to use to express yourself. Now, of course, we know that those outlets are highly moderated, and they're presided over by the wokosphere, especially out there in Silicon Valley. The technocrats control exactly how you express yourself on the internet. So I'm always fond of wondering, when people talk about how you have freedom to express yourself and to use your platform, do you truly have freedom, or do you have freedom to express what they want you to say, which is to show that you're antagonistic to the current presidency and that you want to align Donald Trump with a lot of the racial antagonism that is occurring, that for the most part has been contrived. At least the narratives that have been propagated across the country revolving around Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, etc. Those were ritualistic removals. I'll probably be covering this in another video in reference to Breonna Taylor. But she was ritualistically removed for quote-unquote Friday the 13th, which is in honor of the Mother Goddess. That's who they're aligning her to. She was a sacrifice for the Mother Goddess, or for the energy that revolves around the Mother Goddess, on March 13th, which was a Friday night. When you read the official report on how the police broke into her home, or the home of her and her boyfriend, it occurred a little bit after midnight. But once again, I'll be delving into that in another video.
In the past 48 hours, we've had Tobias Harris, Marcus Smart, CJ McCollum,
all make fools of themselves, trying to act as if they're going to be a part of a quote-unquote solution where the police who were involved in shooting Breonna Taylor are supposedly going to get arrested. Brothers, none of those police are going to get arrested for what they did. None of them. There's a reason why they changed the law on the quote-unquote no-knock warrants after what transpired on the night of March 13th, because what they did was legal. Supposedly they thought that her apartment was being used as an outlet for drug running. That's the allegation. How much substance there is to that, who knows? As I've already stated, from an esoteric perspective, or from a higher level three-dimensional perspective, that was a ritualistic removal. That's why it's been promoted nationwide. But it's only for those who understand what are the important tenets of the craft. But at the end of the day, those cops are not going to get arrested, brothers. It's just not going to happen. What so-called black people need to be focused on is qualified immunity, as well as the disempowerment of police unions. Those are the main two things, so that these cops are held accountable. And of course, mandatory body cams. Those are the three main things. All this other stuff is just nonsense. And it's something that the NBA is going to try to use to promote itself as a woke league. And as I've already stated, and this is something that these players do not understand, the NBA owners will allow them to stick their foot out just far enough to get it chopped off. Because they're going to let these guys run their mouths, alienate most of the viewership, and then at the end of the season come back and tell these players, look guys, the ratings have fallen off so much, we're going to have to renegotiate the collective bargaining agreement, and we're going to have to pay you less money. So the owners are going to end up winning in the end after these guys get pawned.
Brown, so many others use their voice specifically to demand justice for Breonna Taylor's death. And I want you to hear this. This is all really, really important and really powerful. Take a listen.
Brothers, when the so-called black man speaks the truth, the liberal Caucasian Jewish female is not going to be on TV saying, I want you guys to hear this because this is really important. When the truth comes out, I'm talking about the truth, people like her are going to try to censor what people are saying. As long as you're being an agent of chaos, they don't mind it. But if any of these black NBA players were to get on television and say, look, I'm against many of the core aspects or the core components of the quote-unquote Black Lives Matter movement, I've read their mission statement, I know that they're against so-called black men. Watch how quickly the microphone gets snatched from them. And it will get snatched from them by the NBA. People like Rachel Nichols, Adam Silver, etc. That's how you'll know who's in control of this entire process.
Before we start, guys, nothing against the t-shirts.
I'll start by saying
My answer is going to be justice for Breonna Taylor.
We want to make sure that Daniel Cameron will arrest the cops.
we want to continue to uplift people like Breonna Taylor who are victims and haven't received the proper justice that they are due.
Like you said, justice for Breonna Taylor.
Yeah, that's all I got to say.
That's all you got to say, bro, because that's all you know. Your script is over. I mean, brothers, do you really think that Tobias Harris went and looked up who Daniel Cameron is? I mean, no disrespect to the brother, but I just don't see him doing that. I think that he was given that name by certain NBA executives, and he was told, look, this is something that we'd like many of you guys to do. Go out there, get on camera, and we're going to project you as quote-unquote leaders and socially active. The NBA is involved with this. These guys are getting pawned. You can tell like how they're reading it. It's almost like someone who's in a hostage situation, and their job is to read a letter in front of a camera.
Basketball is secondary. It's our job, obviously.
Mine's is going to be just.
No, basketball is not secondary. Actually, basketball is primary for you because that's how you make a living. In the physical world, how you make a living is primary for you. Now, spiritually, that takes precedence over how you make a living. You have to put the Most High first. But a lot of these guys are very confused. They're being cast as leaders, and they're not leaders. Your job is to dribble a basketball and shoot a basketball. That's it. And I've been saying this for the last 3.5 years on various platforms. It truly is a mockery of so-called black people that we're told that basketball players and NFL players are the leaders when it comes to the ideologies that should be espoused to our quote-unquote communities. And the reason why we don't have real communities is because we're setting these people up as paragons or idols, and they're not.
That's my answer to every question.
Daniel Cameron needs to, he has to have pressure.
He's another one rambling about Daniel Cameron. I did a video about this cat well over a year ago. His name is Sterling Brown. He got into it with the Milwaukee PD because he decided that he was going to park in a handicap spot. And instead of him just acknowledging that he was wrong and receiving his ticket, he wanted to bicker back and forth with the cops, and he ended up getting tased. And of course, they made him out to be a victim. Brothers, there are so many mountains that you should be prepared to die on. Right? For your family, for your beliefs, so on and so forth. Don't pick molehills to die on. If you know that you're wrong, deal with your reproof like a man and move forward. He could have died that night. What if he would have had some type of heart palpitation after they tased him? He could have died. All due to the fact that he was unwilling to acknowledge that he was in the wrong. And that's why they're setting him up as someone who's quote-unquote speaking for Breonna Taylor. I'm sure that Breonna Taylor is in the spirit world somewhere. If she's able to see this, she's saying, wow, all these 6'7", 230-pound, 8-figure niggas are concerned about me now that I'm dead. But back when I was alive, I couldn't get attention from any of these dudes.
On his office 24/7, so make sure y'all go out there and support, Breonna Taylor and her family.
It's also
Good job reading from a cue card.
to fulfill and protect our neighborhoods and protect the people that look like us and come from places like us.
CJ McCollum said we have to protect the people that look like us and come from the neighborhoods that we come from. Brothers, look up who CJ McCollum's fiance is. The broad looks like Sarah Michelle Gellar from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, give me a fucking break. Like, his fiance is fucking porcelain skin. She's not even like a Caucasian woman that has a little bit of quote-unquote tan or color or what have you. She's white as white can be. Nothing against CJ, but I don't want to hear what you're talking about, bro. Because I'm pretty sure that you're not well versed in any of the issues, and he's a relatively intelligent cat for an NBA player. But a lot of these guys are just riding the wave. Everything that you believe, everything that you espouse, you have to ask yourself, why am I saying this? Am I saying it because it's right, or am I saying this because it's the wave?
They don't exactly have the same voices that we do.
And that's the only message I got today. Appreciate everybody. Thanks.
Good job, bro. You get the part. Okay, so brothers, now we're going to jump ahead to another very interesting segment that I saw on the NBA and their associations with the Black Lesbians Matter movement. We're going to see this person here on the right, Renee Montgomery, and a lot of segments that I'm going to be using as a backdrop. For those of you who don't know, she's a WNBA player who decided to sit out this season because she wants to be more quote-unquote socially active. What you're going to consistently see is that, as usual with the liberal black female, she has very little understanding of what she's talking about, but she just loves the attention. What the so-called Black Lesbians Matter movement is actually about is empowering those who are dysfunctional mentally and spiritually, and to try to normalize them, to make them believe that not only should they be a part of the masses, but that they should be leading the masses. And this is a technique that's used a lot in Disney programming. What I mean by that is many Disney child stars are initially presented to people as being cherubic or innocent, perfect, etc. Like Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Miley Cyrus, Nick Cannon, so on and so forth. But as they grow and they're able to create this very strong cult of personality and a charismatic movement per se, they'll get young kids to follow them based on the association that they had with being with Disney. As their career develops, what their handlers will do is change their image from something that was quote-unquote innocent to something that is highly sexualized and of course has allusions to Luciferianism. And when you do that, when you can alter the idol and the energy that is emitting from the idol, you'll also alter how the fan base views the idol, therefore how they view themselves. They will change as the idol changes. And this is a technique that's used all across the entertainment industry. But just getting back to the point, this person, Renee Montgomery, has been getting a lot of camera time on TMZ. And I'm not quite sure if they got rid of the previous person, Robert Littell, or if he's just on break, or maybe he's with his family for whatever reason. Maybe his wife was pregnant. Who the hell knows? But she's someone who's getting a lot of camera time now. And to me, it just represents a lot of what the so-called black man has allowed. The so-called black man has allowed not just the so-called black woman, but specifically the liberal black woman, and even more specifically, the degenerate liberal black female, to be the speaker for our people, and they're not qualified. The woman is never going to be an accurate reflection of the state of the nation. The man is the accurate reflection of the state of the nation, because the woman is not a three-dimensional thinker. She has a very difficult time understanding why things are occurring and what's going on around her. A very difficult time. But they try to, distract or deflect from that fact by using their emotions, and that's what liberalism is all about. That's why it's so conducive to the so-called woman, just in general, and to the so-called black woman in particular, because the so-called black man has done a very poor job of informing his woman, because most so-called black men don't know anything about their history or their culture. So the woman now is just looking for something to fill that void. But let's see what they have to say here in regards to the Black Lesbians Matter movement. And by the way, this person, Renee Montgomery, as far as I know, is a so-called lesbian, as the vast majority of WNBA players are. Once again, brothers, there's not much regard that a lesbian is going to have for her nation of people, because her mentality is that they don't need men. Most of them wish that they were men.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the show. My name is Evan, along with Michael J. Babcock. What's up? Renee Montgomery is here.
Hello, hello.
You're about to see for the first time what the court looks like in the NBA bubble. This was a secret for a long time. How is it going to look with the Black Lives Matter written across the hardwood, the social distancing? Well, here it is. Here are photos and video. You can see right there. I think it looks pretty amazing, actually. No fans are going to be allowed at any of the 3 courts in the Walt Disney World in Orlando bubble, but it looks as official and professional.
Once again, initially the NBA ratings will be relatively good, but they will systematically start to fall as people notice how much the NBA is concerned with trolling them as much as they are actually presenting sports events.
High level as it can possibly get. Obviously, the league has decided to put Black Lives Matter across the hardwood because they were working with the players, and that was important.
No, the reason why the league decided to place the Black Lives Matter slogan on the court is because they're a Marxist, quote-unquote, woke league. That's why they decided to do that. It has very little to do with the players. I'm pretty sure that LeBron James did not say, I want Black Lives Matter on the court. LeBron James is a Marxist also. You know, he's what I call a capitalistic Marxist, meaning he espouses a lot of ideologies for the masses that he himself does not adhere to. And that's why the NBA works very closely with LeBron, because they know that he understands things at a relatively high level, because he's a Luciferian just like Adam Silver. But just getting back to the point, it's just 2 horns on the same devil, it's 2 branches on the same tree. And the NBA, like all other woke leagues and all other woke outlets, they're going to feel the economic sting down the line.
That there was a nod to the social justice movement that's going on outside of the bubble, and I think that looks pretty good right there. The players.
There is no social justice movement. There's a social justice ritual. That's what's occurring, where the so-called black man is being used as a distraction so that they can get to the quote-unquote election and try to bring in Marxism full-fledged through the quote-unquote Democratic candidate. Once again, there is no scenario where the so-called black man wins. They're just using you as a pawn. That's it.
Reacting pretty well to it. And then if you look at the area where the coaching staff and other people that are in the building will be sitting, it looks like there's, all the chairs are spread out, right? All the announcers, the reporters, photographers, media people, they're all going to be spread out, social distancing. It looks safe. This on the heels of reports that 0 of all of the NBA people who were in the bubble tested positive for coronavirus on the last round of testing. I mean, look, the NBA is set to tip off July 30th. We're days away. This is pretty exciting stuff, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is very exciting. First of all, 0 positive tests. That's got to be the most exciting thing about it, because health.
Well, shit, you better have 0 positive tests. What the fuck is the point of the damn bubble if people are still getting sick? Allegedly sick. Please keep in mind that if they administer a coronavirus test to you and you have the common cold, that will fall under a coronavirus positive.
At the forefront. So when health is at the forefront and you have 0 positive tests, that's one. You're doing something great. Also, the players' concerns should be at the forefront. So players have voice.
There's only so much that people should be concerned about players' concerns. A lot of this is fear-based, it's fear-mongering, and most of these guys are fearful. And I've been saying this for a very long time. For the people who are constantly trying to use the possibility that their child might get sick, quote unquote, or their wife might get sick, keep that same energy when the vaccine comes out. Make sure that your child is being injected with the vaccine, that your wife is being injected with the vaccine, and that you're getting injected with the vaccine. Keep that same energy when the quote unquote cure drops.
And that something needs to be done on the court, something needs to be done to show our efforts off the court.
If you're truly putting forth your best effort off the court, you're not concerned about whether or not people know about it, unless you're a politician. Once again, a lot of these so-called athletes, they just want to matter in so many other ways because they're not truly confident about what their beliefs are.
NBA and the NBPA, they met the call. I mean, look at the court. It looks professional.
Right.
It wasn't halfway done. You know, you hate when people are like, okay, yeah, I'll do it, and they do it halfway. The NBA went...
Well, the NBA actually makes money, unlike the WNBA. So I would expect it to look professional. I mean, what type of comment is that it looks professional? It's a multi-billion-dollar league. It better look professional.
out and did it the proper way. So I'm excited for July 30th.
Yeah, me too. And I think that, right, the most important thing, because if the players are sick, we aren't going to have basketball. So like Renee said, I think the biggest thing here is that
let the record show no one is ever allowed to get sick ever again, or they will not be allowed to participate in professional sports or in life.
positive tests. Everybody is in the bubble, so unless the bubble is pierced, is penetrated, we should be good, and we should have basketball. You remember when this was a huge debate only weeks ago? One, we didn't know if the players were going to be healthy. Two, we didn't know if the players were willing to even play basketball this season. But now everyone's healthy, they're in the bubble, and we are almost ready to go here. It's going to be great to have sports back.
Yeah, but one of the interesting things is that as certain players are being asked about, how excited they are to get back on the court, some of them are they're deflecting. They're not talking about the game. They're continuing to put the spotlight on social justice issues.
They're not putting the spotlight on anything. They're only highlighting how much they're attention starved. Please keep in mind that these NBA players are accustomed to everything being about them. So one of the main reasons, without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, and I'm sure that many people won't like this, but one of the main reasons why these NBA players are getting involved in riding this wave is because this is another way for them to get attention. It's another way for people to look at them and say, oh, wow, well, we haven't seen Russell Westbrook on the court, but here he is at the protest. He's at the rally. Let's take a photo of him.
The bubble.
Russell Westbrook, by the way, is also selling a bunch of clothing and apparel that is, quote-unquote, woke-oriented, revolving around some of the shooting victims, so on and so forth. So a lot of these guys are turning this into something that's monetizable. And I'm sure that they'll say it's going to go to charity or to a foundation or to the family of the victims, but they're going to get a kickback as well.
People like Dwight Howard, people like Jeremy Grant, people like Tobias Harris.
Dwight Howard needs to never represent anything or anyone other than himself. And even that's disputable.
About how they're getting ready, how they're preparing. They talked about Breonna Taylor and the case going on.
This shit is such a big joke to me. All these dudes trying to act as if they care about this lady. Look, it's very unfortunate what happened to her on the night of March 13th. But these niggas really don't give a shit. They're just saying what they feel like they need to say or what they're supposed to say.
With her, she was killed in Kentucky when cops executed a no-knock warrant. And there was a shooting and she was shot and killed, and people want those cops prosecuted. Here's this.
Brothers, if the cops get into a shootout in the middle of the street and an innocent bystander gets hit by a cop's bullet, the cop is not going to get arrested. He's not going to get locked up. Simple as that. So people have to stop acting as if the other cops are going to get arrested. It is not going to happen. That's a waste of taxpayer dollars. Even if they got arrested, once they go to trial, they're not going to prison. They're going to be exonerated. So a lot of these events are occurring to try to set up justification for so-called black people to be more and more outraged. It's like they're trying to create these pretexts to make sure that so-called black people stay outraged. The main mechanism that they're using, once again, is placing women at the forefront, so-called black women at the forefront as leaders, and also a lot of liberal black males, aka simps, who don't really know what's going on and who don't think rationally. Because they operate so irrationally, they're always going to be upset about everything because they're motivated by their emotions.
Of some of the comments they've been making. And before we run the video, I want to tell you, we spoke to Breonna Taylor's mother. We actually got a comment from her who says she's been paying attention to the NBA players and all that they're doing to keep her case alive. Take a look at the video.
There's things that have been happening that, we still need to discuss.
Yeah, let's discuss how you have purple tips on your damn dreadlocks. Let's discuss that. Dwight Ena.
Taylor and the people who bro, just go dunk a basketball, please. Heinous incident against her. They're still free out there living their best life.
We want to make sure that Daniel Cameron will arrest the cops and officers involved with Breonna Taylor's death. And yeah, that's all I got to say.
Yeah, we know that's all you have to say, bro, because that was all that was written on your script. That was all that you were told to read from, and that was all that you were told to recite. Brothers, once again, it is truly the height of insult towards the so-called black community that we're told that quote-unquote basketball players are supposed to represent us because they have a quote-unquote platform and we don't. We all have a platform now. This is something that the mainstream liberal media and the mainstream liberal sports media are doing to control the so-called black community through the idols that they've set up. They don't want the real leaders to gain any type of a platform or anything like that. They want to make sure that the focus is always on basketball players, football players, so on and so forth.
Look, like I said, we actually got in touch with Breonna Taylor's family because you also.
And once again, if Tobias Harris sat there and said, you know what happened to Breonna Taylor was terrible, but the real issues that are pervading the so-called black community are the lack of patriarchal authority in the home, the 400 to 600,000 black female abortions every year, the promotion of homosexuality, lesbianism, and now transgenderism and soon to be pedophilia in the so-called black community. And yes, that Dwayne Wade ritual involving his son Zion or Zaya was meant to be an introduction to the acceptability of pedophilia or quote-unquote pederasty / man-boy love. That's why they're sexualizing that little boy who's only 12 years old. That's what it's about. So if Tobias Harris were to sit there at the dais and say those things, or at the podium and say those things, he would be canceled out of the NBA tomorrow.
People like LeBron James and Chris Paul and Carmelo Anthony, a lot of big NBA players, and also a lot of big WNBA players. In fact, the whole league is wearing warm-up shirts that say...
There is no such thing as a big WNBA player. None of those bitches matter. Not one of them.
There's a name on them. Renee, you know a lot of these people who are pretty much everybody that's playing.
Now, I did a video about this very confused person, Angel McCautry, on my YouTube channel last year. I'm not quite sure if they took it down or not, but she's bugged out of her fucking mind.
And how special that's been. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's been like for the players?
Yeah, so the players, there was this big debate when I set out, are the players that are going inside the bubble, are they distracting from the message? Are they taking away from the movement? And I've said it from the beginning. I don't think so. I think that we're going to see a lot of things happen inside the bubble that propel the movement.
There is no movement because you guys have no solution. Your quote-unquote solution is equality, a concept that doesn't fucking exist. So there is no movement.
The movement, and you're seeing it now in the NBA, the courts.
And I'm sure that there are a lot of woke Negroes who get upset with that. The civil rights quote-unquote movement proved to just be Marxist. That was not a real quote-unquote movement. All that was the method to transition from Jim Crow to the prison industrial complex. Do you understand that? That's all the so-called civil rights movement was.
The WNBA, every player is going to have Breonna Taylor's name on their jersey. That the hashtag say her name, well, the whole league is going to say her name. And I love that Breonna Taylor's mother is speaking out and encouraging the players because...
Right, but where's all this love for so-called black people who are still alive? Niggas love showing so much love to so-called black people who are dead. Show some to the people who are still fucking here.
That's good for players, for me to know, these are not just hashtags,
Yes, they are.
And hashtag...
Look at this goofy shit. All these liberal Caucasian people, they have nothing else better to do with their fucking time. Throwing up so-called black power fists, which are actually Marxist fists, which are actually Luciferian fists. I'll be going through that in another video. But this has nothing to do with anything. These people don't give a fuck about no damn Breonna Taylor.
Taylor a lot, but this is somebody's child, so I love to hear.
Hey, you know what? You super liberal females, when you try to encourage and endorse pro-choice, that's somebody's child also.
That her family sees the efforts. Obviously, we all want the same goal in an arrest, but...
Justice for Breonna Taylor sleeping while black. You know, brothers, when I used to work in corporate America, I wish that the liberal black female, and I'm guessing that this person here on the right is either a so-called light-skinned black man or maybe interracial or maybe Hispanic, who knows. I wish that they were as concerned about the so-called black men in the workplace as they are for dead black women now. Because I saw so many so-called black men have a hard time in the workplace. Not even necessarily because of the so-called white man and white woman, but because of liberal black women who were jealous and worried that a so-called black man might actually have the opportunity to tell them what to do. I used to work for a so-called black man at one of the jobs that I worked at previously, who would tell me that the people who give him the hardest time are black women. He was an executive. He was a director in the organization that I was in at the time, and he would tell me, he would say, yo, the people who give me the hardest time by far are black women.
I love to just see that there's that connection there. This is someone's child.
Well, here's what Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, said. She said, quote, "Everyone raising their voices for justice are what keeps this family going each day. What is being done by the NBA and the WNBA is amazing. Now it's time for the Attorney General to listen, to charge everyone responsible for Bree's murder, and get..."
It's not going to happen. I could be wrong about that, but it's just not going to happen. How are they going to substantiate it? They were issued a no-knock warrant to go into that apartment. They went in there, somebody fired shots at them, they fired shots back. At least that's their official story. So even if it goes to trial, none of those guys are going to prison. They're not going to see one day in fucking prison. It's just not going to happen. It's a waste of time. And what these protests are just a portal to try to implement a lot of Marxist philosophies and ideologies, and they're using so-called black people, but particularly the so-called black man, as a pawn. And I told you brothers a while ago, they're going to try to transition from centering around the so-called black man to making about the black woman, because that's their focus anyway. They're not concerned about you. They could care less about the heterosexual black man. They want to make it about the woman if they can. And the people who are going to help them do that are the lesbian leadership of these various liberal movements like Black Lesbians Matter. They don't want to talk about the so-called black man for very long. They don't give a shit about you enough to do that. So they're going to try to make it about Breonna Taylor, even though that situation was completely fucking different from what happened on camera, at least, to George Floyd, or the person who supposedly is George Floyd.
Do justice. Bree should be with us. The world was a better place with her. And then her attorney also told us that Tamika was a part of a Zoom meeting with over 30 NBA players, including Chris Paul and Carmelo Anthony, on Sunday, where they continue to discuss
a couple of wizards in the NBA,
how to best use their platforms to put pressure on prosecutors in Kentucky to bring everyone to justice who was involved in her killing.
They're not going to do a fucking thing.
I know we just touched on it, but when you hear those words from Breonna Taylor's mother, how does it make you feel?
It makes it feel worth it. You know, for somebody like me who sat out, you know, it's highly publicized why I sat out.
Highly publicized. Miss, nobody knows who the fuck you are. I couldn't tell the difference between you and fucking Serena Williams before I started seeing you on this show. Wasn't nobody highly publicizing the fucking thing you were doing.
It was worth it, because we're not sitting out just for, you know, everyone's getting caught in the hashtags. These are real people. This movement is about a real thing, real people. So I love...
No, the movement is about attention mongering, trying to figure out how you can force so-called white people to capitulate to your whims and make you feel better about yourselves, because so-called black people don't trust one another. Most of our people don't know anything about our history, so therefore we know very little about our future. So a lot of what's going on is just an attempt at a coup by various factions, and the so-called black man with understanding is just sitting back like, what the fuck is going on here? While these simps, homosexuals, lesbians, feminists are just trying to commandeer the entire situation and have no idea what they're going to do next. They're just happy to be at the center, at the epicenter of attention.
See that the NBA is working directly with the family. The WNBA is doing the same. So this is what...
To do what? They're working directly with the family to do what? That's how you know, once again, the NBA players were given a script to read. They were told, try to put pressure on Daniel Cameron. The players are probably like, who the fuck Daniel Cameron? Daniel Cameron is the person we want you to mention. Don't worry about who the hell he is. Just mention him. And shout out how much you love Breonna Taylor, nigga. Okay, camera's on.
What is it about?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Renee said, it was tragic. It was senseless. Justice is long overdue here. And I agree. Look, the news cycle is very short, and something is always bound to happen that is going to capture the country's attention. The way to fight against that is to have big stars continually to make people not forget about these.
No, what would impress me is if Carmelo Anthony and Chris Paul started talking about how the so-called black man needs to take control of his own life and take control over his household. That's the only thing that would impress me. There are so-called black people getting killed every fucking day. Every weekend you're hearing about what's going on in Chicago and New York City and other major cities across America. Just the fact that you're only talking about Breonna Taylor, it makes everything else look phony and fallacious. If so-called black lives are going to matter, we have to start with what's destroying so-called black lives the most. Not what's going to get the most attention from the mainstream liberal media.
Things that have happened, and Breonna Taylor is example number one here.
But once again, the real issue is that a lot of these woke niggas are trained to believe that the most destructive forces in the so-called black community are the ones that are quote-unquote keeping it real. The gang members, the drug dealers, them niggas, they keeping it real, son. They doing what they gotta do because, the white man, all that bullshit.
It's best these guys keep on, and these girls keep on keeping her name in the spotlight. Don't let anybody forget. That's how justice will be served.
But anyway, peace.